Retirement Lifestyle Show is back with a new episode today. We're going to talk about a topic that we haven't discussed before, and it's a pretty new one. I'm really looking forward to it. I spent a lot of time researching it. My fellow co-host, Roshan is going to introduce it to us today.
Our topic for today is tokens, not cryptocurrency tokens, AI tokens. And to give you some data, so first I need to send a thank you to Dan Niles. I attended a presentation he gave where he started me down this path when he talked about the growth in token usage with AI. Right now, there's somewhere between 50 to 100 trillion tokens per day. And each of those tokens represent an opportunity. It's a cost and a revenue opportunity. Cost to some companies, revenue opportunity for others. I'm trying to look at this from an investment perspective for us. Now, as we always say when we discuss any investments, please do your own research and your own homework. This is not investment advice. We're just trying to help you by sharing some of the research we've been working on. So let's start with the basics as what is a token. So every time you go into AI and you put in type something in, you're using tokens. As an example, a token is roughly 3/4 of the average word. So like the word investment could be a token. The word those are usually a token each. And why this is important is AI doesn't read your message at once. What it does is it looks at these tokens sequentially, and every single token costs money to process. And there's just an incredible amount of growth in this token space. So we're going to discuss a little bit more about tokens, the growth there, the potential opportunity. And tokens aren't just words at this point. Images, audio, video, they can all be tokenized. It becomes a picture is a sequence of visual tokens. Podcasts like we're recording would be audio tokens, and the token is the atomic unit of AI. Adrian, any thoughts or anything to add on the definition?
Well, I think you did a really great job covering it. And I think the two things that I will really add to this is, one thing I guess like our audience and listeners will think about is, how will tokenization affect the products and services that I use every day or companies that I invest in? And the two things that like come to mind right now is the first one, AI could potentially become cheaper over time with better tokenization. This means that AI can process the same information using fewer tokens. And for consumers, that can mean, lower subscription costs for any like AI apps that you use or services that you use. There could be more features in any AI assistant tools that you use in your daily life or at work or whatever it is. And if AI starts becoming more embedded in products that you already use, you could see better features in the future. So eventually, costs can be lower right now. That's a very big thing that companies are looking at because a lot of companies are being forced to start adopting and using AI. Well, with that, there are these new costs that arrive with it, which Roshan explained, tokens. Whenever you use AI, you're taking up a lot of tokens so they can give you output and information that you request. So basically, they use tokens to analyze what you're requesting, and then they give you back an answer, which also uses tokens as well. So these tokens can become very expensive, which causes companies to, it's great that they're using AI, they're becoming more efficient, but if they're spending a lot of money on this, they're not going to have those huge margins of success or profitability that investors really look at. So my second point would be, that personalized advice and services can become more accessible with more efficient tokenization. Historically, when it comes to getting advice or some type of specialized services, it could be very expensive. But like I said, with more efficient tokenization, these things can become a little bit more affordable.
Adrian, you said something I need to follow up on. I'm a student of this, not by no means the expert. When I believe you had said that token usage could go down with efficiency. I didn't see that. I definitely saw token cost going down. Do you mind either revisiting that? Is that in fact what you saw? Usage may go down, not with efficiency, not just
So
costs.
an interesting area that I found out about and was researching last night about tokenization is it's very efficient and very cost effective when it's looking at any type of like English language models. So that's something where it can really just, be more cost efficient, give better performance, better answers, and overall is more efficient. But certain languages or countries out there that tailor their AI models to their base language requires a lot more tokenization and more usage. And the more that is used, the more money it is. So I think that's something too where, if tokenization becomes a little bit more efficient, you can see some cost saving aspects as well. But again, that may be out in the future, but that's something too that, is something that's going to be, very valuable because as tokenization becomes more efficient and more cheaper, it can, lead to more global investment opportunities where in the past, if you're in the United States, you tend to be more a domestic investor looking at, US companies, US products and services. With the idea of more efficient tokenization in the future, this could give you access to global information, foreign news, foreign analysts, foreign companies that you could potentially invest in and learn about more, where, you know, 10 years ago, people never even had that opportunity to begin with.
I'll give you a stat I was saving for later that lines up a little bit with what you're saying. Token per token prices have actually fallen 99.7% in the GPT-3 era. However, AI bills have tripled in that era. It's because usage of more people using AI have gone up for individuals, but the bigger impact is that agentic workflows, when the AI is working without a human, agentic workflows use 50 to 500 times as many tokens per task. So as these companies build these agents, they will use more tokens, and cheaper tokens, at least to this point, have meant more usage of AI.
Yep. And again, I just want to do a quick summary again. When we talk about tokens, this is the way that, AI models, AI assistants are just reading and annualizing the information that you're giving them because you have a question or you want to use some type of service. They use tokens to annualize that, understand it, and give you a response and an answer back. That's why it's just, so important. And to you, our listeners and viewers, this could be something that you didn't know that you might be using in your everyday life right now.
And it's the explosive growth in tokens that we see as the potential opportunity here. Just to simplify what Adrian said, a token is roughly three quarters of a word that AI uses to read and write. So when you put in a full sentence in AI, you're using multiple tokens. I'm looking up one thing to
And I
try
think
to
while
give you
you're
an
looking
example.
that up, another interesting thing that I was researching last night, and I'm sure this is going to be a big part of the podcast we talk about today, is this is where memory comes into play because sometimes when you're using AI, you can create these like long conversation or these huge threads of just information that you're using. Let's just say you're using AI to plan your next trip, so you're using it as like a traveling guide and you're telling it all these like trips that you're going on or all these vacations that you want to go on in the future, and it will consolidate it all and keep all that within the conversation or the thread. So when you go back to the AI and say, hey, I just had a great trip over in Europe, this is what I did. My next trip, I want to go to South America. So when you go back to that AI system, it's going to go back and say, wow, okay, this is everything that we planned, talked about, and you did at that trip in Europe. Maybe these are some things that you'll like to do in South America. So the tokens are going to look at that entire conversation, condense it all at once, and give you more information to plan that next trip you go out to South America. Well, the thing is, over time, that's just a lot of memory and a lot of energy and a lot of uses that you're using all at once. That sometimes some of the information can get lost or the response may not be good as these conversations become very, very long. Where over time, you may see that start to become more efficient, more optimized, more cost efficient. But again, that's just another practical way that people are using this new technology.
Yep. And so what I was looking up was how many tokens is the question, what is a token? And I had a question mark on it that actually, and I put quotes around it when I asked this. So that's actually 6 tokens. So it's only 4 words, but the question mark and the quotations around it count as well. They're about 50, and the cost for there's about 50 trillion tokens a day. That's $50 million a day right now being spent. That's where I'm looking at this opportunity. And from an investment perspective, we just went through some of the numbers, and 50 trillion tokens a day is an uptick for the first half of 2025. I'm looking at token usage between January 25 to April 26 grew over 1,000%. The Alibaba CEO said it doubles every 2 to 3 months. Goldman Sachs says this will multiply by 24x by 2030. So you just see this explosive growth. And when I saw the Dan Niles presentation, my thought was just how can we look at an investment opportunity in this space, right? So we're going to have this growth. People will use it more. We're just at the early stages of agents. So once agents are using it, agents being independent without a human running these things on their own, we're going to have even greater growth because they'll be using what was the number, 50 to 500 times tokens that are used per human. So the area I was looking at then are what are the bottlenecks? And the thought really being pretty simple that if you go back and look at from the I think it was fall of 22, the launch of ChatGPT, the bottlenecks where the opportunities have been. So first you start with Nvidia and their stock, going up as much as it has. They were the bottleneck for a while. Now there are enough chips available. So with this tokenization, with the explosive growth, where are the bottlenecks? The first one is power. A single AI task uses 1,000 times more electricity than a traditional web search, right? And then you multiply that by trillions of tokens a day. It's huge. The Department of Energy projects that data center. I'm sorry. The Department of Energy projects that data centers could consume up to 12% of total U.S. electricity by 2030 from 4% today. Right, so that's a 3 times growth. And I wouldn't be surprised if they're understating the numbers here. The other thing with the data centers growth, there have been 16 gigawatt announced data centers in 2026. Only 5 gigawatts are actually under construction. 30 to 50% of data centers planned for 2026 are going to be delayed or canceled because the power infrastructure is just simply not there. Right? So you've got this huge power shortage that we're going to have to address. What some of these companies are doing, the hyperscalers, they're looking at bringing their own power. They literally call it BYOP in the industry now. So just as an example, Meta signed power agreements with Vistra, TerraPower, Oklo, and Constellation Energy, right? So there's that first major bottleneck of electricity. And once again, I'm not recommending any of the companies I just named, just giving you some of the data out there so you can research this further. But we've got to expand power significantly, right? You've already got certain politicians complaining about power usage and how the consumers got to pay for it and trying to put things in. And the hyperscalers, they're happy to pay for it or bring their own power, but we need to expand in this space. Any thoughts on that first bottleneck?
Well, that's just at the start of it for the supply chain, like you mentioned, Roshan. Just the energy consumption is just going to be a huge factor with this, AI boom, with supporting tokenization and everything. And then you think of that, you think of the data centers, you think of the semiconductor chips. I mean, we talked about this on a previous podcast before for just investors out there. It's the value chain, where we look at the different parts of AI when it comes to the value chain. You look at the data center and energy, then you think about, the cloud, these actual language models, and then it goes down to the actual applications, the products and services. So there's a lot of different ways you can attack this angle if you're interested in investing in AI, or you think this could be a good part of your portfolio that you really need to, consider and look at. Because when people think about, tokens, AI applications, they immediately think of the language models, AI's assistants. But Roshan here is talking about, all the way up on the top of the supply energy. What is the actual energy usage right now? What does it cost? What is the growth outlook on that? And why is it so important to fuel these, products and services that people, if you think about it, and companies are relying on every single day?
Yeah, to me, the only thesis on this, and not on the power, but really on AI not working, is if you're a believer that this is either temporary or not here to stay or a fad. I'm definitely not a believer in that at all. So I looking at for the opportunities. Now I've said this before on here is I'm looking towards the picks and shovels using the old gold miners analogy there. I'm not trying to pick a winner of who's going to be the AI model everyone uses or who's going to be the best one out there. I'm just looking at the supplier side, right? Or and then
Interesting.
particularly the bottleneck.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Roshan. I feel like I'm going a little bit on the opposite end, where you're saying you're looking for like the picks and shovels. That's really on the top of the supply chain, like really just the groundbreaking stuff, starting it, providing the actual resources and materials needed to really fuel this technology so it can grow in the future. I'm actually a little bit more interested in looking at the very end of the supply chain, the actual like products and services. Because when people compare this really to like, what computers were in like the early 80s and 90s and what we have now everybody has basically a computer in their pocket, their phones, where originally you think of this old big blocky computer that people used to have that you had to plug in to connect to the internet. And now people have these phones where they can pull up the internet, watch TV, stream, all right now. So I kind of really am interested in looking at all the different usage, applications, products and services that are going to come out with AI. And how does tokenization play an impact in that as well? And one thing I found interesting when I was researching this podcast is when we talked about tokenization, we were talking about how AI, read and analyzes sentences or requests that people give it. And one thing that I learned is kind of a shortcoming with tokenizations is sometimes it does struggle with numbers and math. And that's something too that I actually ran across a couple of years ago when I started using AI and
Adrian,
ChatGPT.
I'm sorry to interrupt. That's not tokenization though, right? That's AI is struggling to give you good answers with math. And even for me in some of the areas for financial data, but you asking the AI the math question and it responding to you, that their tokens being used.
Yes. So there's tokens being used, but the way we look at what I found in the research last night is the way we look at math problems in numbers is different from how AI and tokenizations look at numbers. Did you see anything like that, Roshan?
I did, but my point is not is that with what we're discussing today with tokens, you're saying the answer is incorrect what it's giving you. I agree, right? That has been the case. My only point is that right or wrong, it's still using tokens.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
still using tokens. And this goes back to maybe what I was trying to hint on in the beginning of the podcast is one of the most crucial things and most important things is, you know, token optimization. And this also may be kind of what you're talking about as well, Roshan. It is kind of on the human part of us as well to give better responses and answers that's easy for it to identify, read, to give us better outputs, garbage in, garbage out, or good things in, good things out, where that's something too that relationship between human and AI right now doesn't need to be perfect. If it's good, you'll get a good output, but over time, maybe, that's where tokenization needs to become a little bit more efficient, because sometimes, you want to get the best possible answer you can get, but if you don't ask the right questions, where now if you're kind of getting close, it can become a little bit better. That's where, a lot of value can come from consumers and companies that are relying on this, like I mentioned, every single day.
Yeah. One other point that I want to make from what you had said just a moment ago, to backtrack, it's not that I don't have an interest in trying to figure out what's coming or who the winner's going to be. I'm very hesitant to invest in that way, right? Because if I'm wrong at who the winner is going to be, I'm going to lose money, right? Like I don't want to pick the Netscape that goes out of business, or the eToys, or Enron, or Compaq, or something like that, right? If I look at these suppliers, regardless of who wins the AI arms race, they're going to need these supplies, right? From these companies. So that's why I'm looking at the picks and shovel side, and then in particular the bottlenecks, because that creates pricing power, right? And with electricity, not so much because of the regulatory environment around there. But the second bottleneck right now, that if you've been paying attention to what's been going up in the market in the last year or two, the second bottleneck is really memory chip supply, right? So what's going on right now is that SK Hynix is a big producer, Micron's a big producer, Western Digital, SanDisk, Seagate, those are all big producers of memory. They're all sold out through the year, right? Like, and I maybe not all of them. Multiple of those companies have actually made announcements they're sold out. Some of them have not actually said that officially, but what they don't have enough memory chips. They can't even make them. There aren't enough facilities out there. And I believe through my research, I had seen some of them saying this extends into 27 as well, but I didn't write that down. So don't quote me on it. But either way, what happens when they're sold out? Well, they're able to, they're, the consumer, the buyer is willing to pay more, right? They've got pricing power because there isn't enough out there. So that's the second big bottleneck. The third one that I'm looking at is just data center construction itself, right? So some of these construction and engineering firms, they can't build, or they don't have the supplies they need in order to do so. So giving you some numbers, US data center demand will reach 35 to 45 gigawatts by 2030. That's about double where it was in 24. So that's doubling in 6 years, right? You need an electrician, a structural engineer, a contractor to build these data centers, right? And we just don't have enough out there. Actually, Meta has created a system or a school. While you're responding to this, I'll look into it, where they'll train people in some of these things so that they can help get their data centers built. I'm going to look that up. While I'm doing that, I'd love your thoughts on those three bottlenecks. Well, all three, or the two I just mentioned specifically: the memory and the data center construction.
I mean, no, I think those are three really great areas. I mean, the first one, like we talked about, energy. Obviously, that's getting a lot of press, a lot of investors' attention, where you're thinking about like electricity, water has actually been a significant thing that has caused AI to use a lot of consumption with. So, those are the first ones that I mentioned. The second one, memory, like you talked about, just going back to my example, memory is just becoming more and more important because what you talked about earlier, agentic AI typically relies a lot on memory, because memory is extremely important because it really keeps and consolidates a lot of the conversation, the work, the data that companies and people are using every day. And for AI to quickly go back and pull from its memory bank or its data to give you the answers and responses that you rely on every single day is just crucial. And that's why memory has been getting a lot of attention from investors. And then data centers, like you said, that's really just like the factories, the warehouses that are storing all these like hard drives and computers that these AI systems are relying on every day. So I think those are three great areas that where you could do your homework and research to see if there are opportunities out there for you as an investor.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, and that's really to me, the purpose of this episode, right? To give you areas to look at. I did find that Meta thing, and this will just show you the shortage, right? Meta, who has created a trade school funding workforce development programs for the shortage of skilled tradespeople needed to build the data center infrastructure. It's called American Workforce Academy. They have it in Louisiana, Ohio, and Indiana. What they'll do is Meta will fund all the costs, tuition, airfare, lodging. They'll provide a stipend. The programs last 4 to 5 weeks. They'll teach you electrical work, HVAC, mechanical systems, plumbing, welding, fiber optic installation. You're guaranteed an offer of employment on a Meta construction site. So just think about this for a second. This is a company that essentially makes their money on advertising on their social media and WhatsApp, et cetera, Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. They've decided to build a trade school to help with data center construction. That to me just demonstrates how big a shortage it is, right? They're willing to invest in this because they can't reach their target. And Meta has been laying off employees, right? And yet they're thinking this is a good investment. To me, that just underscores how big the opportunity is.
That and yep, and all the money that's being flown to these sectors and these spaces as well. I mean, that's like one of the oldest kind of investment analogies. Follow where the money's going, like where is all the spending going, and start there with like your research to see if that's a good investment opportunity. I mean, our previous episode we talked about over $150 billion just constantly being spent. I mean, that's something too that's garnering a lot of attention right now.
The money is still being spent there. That actually is on my list of risks. That's one of those things that I saw. Adrian, you may have seen this as well. CapEx fatigue. If one hyperscaler pulls back, they think that could be the first domino where other hyperscalers will pull back. I don't think we're there yet because you've got them issuing new shares of stock or debt, a lot of the hyperscalers right now. So I think they're still all in, but that is a risk that's out there. Next is commoditization, what we talked about earlier about token pricing going down. But so far, token pricing going down has been offset significantly by use of tokens going up. There's also regulatory risk. The EU AI Act is live. The US government is working on theirs. And then finally, if there is some kind of disruption from open source, Meta has been releasing open source models for free. And that will put downward pressure on the tokenization space. I still think there's a good opportunity, which is why I'm spending time researching in this space. But as with any investment, there's risk. And you're going back to Adrian, what we discussed earlier. That's part of the reason I'm not trying to pick a winner, so to speak. Is I feel like the risk is too high. I do have some thoughts and ideas on who it might be. However, I'm not making any major investments in that space at all.
Yes, and it's just going to be very interesting to continue to kind of watch this, business cycle, life cycle of AI. If you think about it, I mean, the first thing that we thought about was a couple years back. They came out with ChatGPT. It was like the language model where everybody was really just really fascinated by this, really got firsthand use cases on it, and then that's where you see companies trying to build their own, models as well. And then fast forward to just recently, they're starting to talk about you know agentic AI, and that started to fuel a lot of memory companies because it relies heavily on that. Where the original language models, that wasn't a big thing that they needed right away. So these things are definitely in the present, but are going to be changing within like the short term, within the next couple of years. So following the most recent up to date things is going to be very crucial, especially if you're looking at like the applications, the products, the services, like I mentioned, or if you kind of want to, do things that are more comfortable with you or things that you know more about. For example, like energy companies as well. That's something that you could look to as well. I mean, there's a lot of different sectors and industries that are playing with AI, because sometimes I don't want people to just think, oh, AI is just technology. What Roshan's telling you here, it can be something else, an entirely different industry where you can find your opportunity.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think the opportunity is just huge and across industries. It's actually a part I pulled out just for time was some of the opportunities per industry, just to focus on the bottlenecks. But maybe that's something we revisit in the future. Just want to say a couple things in closing, just to reiterate what we talked about. One, the token is a unit of value in the AI economy. Two, follow those constraints, right? And what we're looking at, power, memory, and construction. That's where I'm doing my research. Once again, I'm not recommending any of the companies mentioned earlier, just saying that area seems to be a good area to research. Three, efficiency will continue to improve. And that's something to sort of watch, because if there is a point in the future where token usage is not significantly higher than is not significantly outpacing the decline in pricing. That's something that could change this thesis. And finally, the ultimate mode is the data mode, right? So short term infrastructure seems to be the opportunity. Then medium term would be more like the AI applications and the proprietary data, and then long term would be the highest quality data. So Adrian, what you were looking at to me is more that medium term stuff, and it's just too murky for me to feel very comfortable in that medium term space right now.
No, I completely understand that. And I think something that we haven't really talked about, it won't be like a huge or long conversation if I think about it, is, you know, the opportunities where we talked about, data center construction, energy, memory companies is a little bit more different where, they're really seeing the bottlenecks, the impacts, the profitabilities, the revenues like today. And that's where it could be a little bit more of a secure area to look into because, again, energy consumption is something that has been constantly needed like over time. Where you're saying some like the products and services and the applications, are a little bit far out. Where trying to make a prediction on which one's going to be the winner is a little bit more difficult, where the ones kind of up the value chains, providing the energy, providing the infrastructure, helping with the supply chain is a little bit more clear, where there's more data, information, earnings, revenues, where you can help make your decision on it.
Well, yeah, money's literally being spent there right now,
Exactly.
right? And with the other ones, it's not the money isn't being spent. It's just that you once again you don't know if you're going to end up being the investing in the Netscape, which then is gone, and people are using Chrome or any of the other browsers, and that's the risk you take by picking the winner at the early
Exactly.
stage. I mean, even now, if you just look at it, ChatGPT was the trailblazer at one point, and right now it's amongst the worst of the models. Right now, it's Claude and Anthropic and Gemini with Google that are being talked about, and I've definitely heard some people say there's a possibility of OpenAI just going under completely at some point. Right? They're working on their IPO right now, but that's something where, from what I've read and heard, and I haven't seen all the financials yet, but that's something that I personally would be really hesitant to even spend my time researching.
Yeah, no, exactly. I'm sure by like the end of the year, there's just going to be new information for us to tackle with this type of topic. I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, but that's a great point. We'll come back to this maybe in 6 months or so, and just see where things stand. For those of you that are listening, please like, subscribe, give us 5 stars. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. Take control and achieve your goals.
Schedule a conversation with Roshan, Adrian, or Eric today at retirementlifestyleshow.com. Roshan and Eric are certified financial planner practitioners. They, along with Adrian, are investment advisor representatives and serve clients across the U.S. with financial planning and investment advice through Arete Wealth. If you found this show helpful, gained knowledge, or enjoyed the time you spent with us, tell your friends and leave us a 5-star review. This will help others discover the show. To access our show notes, to download any of the tools mentioned in today's podcast, to ask us a question, or to schedule a conversation, go to retirementlifestyleshow.com. All opinions expressed by podcast hosts and guests are solely their own. While based on information they believe is reliable, neither Arete Wealth nor its affiliates warrants its completeness or accuracy, nor do their opinions reflect the opinion of Arete Wealth. This podcast is for general informational purposes only and should not be regarded as specific advice or recommendations for any individual. Before making any decisions, consult a professional. The show hosts offer investment advice through Arete Wealth Advisors, LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor, and securities through Arete Wealth Management, LLC, member FINRA, SIPC, and NFA. Finally, our music is The Chance by Jason Shaw and Audionautics. It's part of the YouTube audio library, and it's licensed under a Creative Commons license. I am Ray Voices. Thank you for listening.